I died for 11 seconds. That's how long the monitor flatlined before they brought me back. And in those 11 seconds, my son was sipping champagne in Palm Springs, on vacation. When I came to, I thought maybe I'd hear his voice, feel his hand in mine, but all I found was a note on my hospital table. "Take it easy, Mom. We'll check in when we're back." 12 days. That's how long they planned to be gone. And that's when I realized this wasn't a family. This was a transaction. I used to believe love earned its way into permanence, that if you gave enough of your time, your energy, your whole damn life, it would circle back to you when it mattered. For years, I was the rock beneath our little family. When my husband, Mark, passed at 49, Derek was just 24, lost, hollow-eyed, and I stepped in for everything, helped him finish school, helped him open that real estate firm he always talked about. I even cashed out the savings Mark and I built for retirement. Every penny went to help him launch. And when his wife Kristen came into the picture, I let her move into my home. I didn't complain when she boxed up my grandmother's china. I didn't say a word when they redecorated the house I'd lived in for 30 years. Because family sacrifices. That's what we do, right? They called me a blessing every Christmas. "We couldn't do this without you, Mom." I'd make the sweet potato pie from scratch, watch the grandkids while they booked their getaway trips to Miami, Key West, Aspen. I was the dependable one, always available, always grateful just to be needed. But here's the part I didn't see coming. Being dependable made me invisible. It didn't happen all at once. It started with small dismissals. Derek forgetting to tell me about dinner plans, Kristen rolling her eyes when I offered advice. And over time, my voice got quieter, not because I lacked thoughts, but because I was tired of repeating myself to people who had already made up their minds. Still, I stayed, because that's what good mothers do. We hold the line, even when it's cracking beneath our feet. I kept telling myself they'd come around, that one day they'd realize all I gave up for them. But then came the stroke, the ICU, the empty room, and that's when I realized this wasn't just a family story anymore. This was a revenge story. Just not the kind where I raise my voice or slam the door. No, I had a different ending in mind. They thought I'd always be there, sitting by the phone, waiting. They were wrong. I heard the flatline before I felt the silence. It was strange. One minute I was floating somewhere between memory and nothing, and the next I was crashing back into my body with a jolt so hard it rattled my teeth. A nurse named Brian stood over me, his face pale and wide-eyed. "You're back," he whispered, like even he wasn't sure I was supposed to be. My first thought wasn't about me, it was Derek, my son. Surely he'd be pacing the hallway, worried sick, or maybe Kristen, holding one of the grandkids, trying to keep them calm. But when I looked around, the only thing on the nightstand was a folded note in Derek's handwriting. "Gone for 12 days, Palm Springs. Hope you're feeling better by the time we get back. Don't stress, Mom." I reread it 3 times, not because it was unclear, because I didn't want to believe it. 12 days. They had left while I was unconscious. They hadn't even waited to see if I'd lived through the night. Brian, bless him, tried to soften it. He offered me water, adjusted my blanket. But later that night, I overheard him talking on the phone just outside my room. He thought I was asleep. "Yeah, she's stable now, ma'am. Yes, she's awake. Would you like to speak with her?" A pause. "Oh, okay. Just thought you'd want to know." That silence on the other end, that was my son, the man I gave my life to. 8 days I stayed in that ICU. No visitors, no flowers, no calls. Just the quiet hum of machines and the occasional whisper of nurses tiptoeing past my room. It's funny, isn't it? How a room can feel more like a tomb when you're not dead, but nobody's coming. If you've ever been in a hospital room with no one coming to check in, no one asking if you're okay, I wonder, how did you get through it? Tell me in the comments. I'm not the only one, right? When they finally discharged me, Brian was the only one who wheeled me out. He didn't make eye contact, and I didn't blame him. The hospital van dropped me off at my front door, and that's when I noticed something strange. My emergency key, the one I kept hidden in the ceramic frog planter, was gone. I knocked, waited, knocked again. Finally, the door creaked open. It wasn't Derek. It wasn't Kristen. It was a neighbor I barely knew, blinking at me like I was a stranger. They're not here," she said. "They mentioned something about staying another night in LA?" I nodded, but something inside me shifted. If they could forget me this easily, maybe it was time I started forgetting them too. The front door didn't feel like mine anymore. The minute I stepped inside, I knew. The air was different. Cold, like the warmth had been scrubbed out with bleach and ambition. The couch was gone. My curtains were gone. The house I had poured 30 years into had been rearranged like I was already dead and buried. There were paint swatches taped to the hallway wall. A real estate flyer sat right on the dining table with a picture of my living room. My living room, under the headline, "Charming Southern Home, Perfect for Young Families." I hadn't signed a single paper. I hadn't said yes to anything. Then I saw it. A manila folder left open near the kitchen sink. Inside, a familiar document. Power of attorney. My name, my signature. Dated 2 years ago during my hip surgery. I'd been groggy from anesthesia. Derek had told me it was just in case. I guess that case had finally come. I sank to the kitchen floor. My legs just gave out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat there, surrounded by the hum of a dishwasher I didn't start and the soft tick of the dining room clock, like the house itself had already moved on without me. After who knows how long, I pulled myself up and went searching. In the pantry, I found an old iPad, Derek's, still logged into his messages. Maybe I was hoping for an explanation. What I got instead was the truth. House goes on MLS Monday. If she's not home yet, we'll push the assisted living plan. Let's be real, Mom was never good at boundaries. That was Kristen, my daughter-in-law, writing like I was a task to manage, like I hadn't changed diapers, worked night shifts, paid for their honeymoon, watched their kids for 5 summers straight. They weren't preparing for my recovery. They were preparing to erase me. I opened the folder again, hands shaking. This wasn't the limited medical form I'd agreed to. It was broader, aggressive. Notarized with my name, spelled right, but forged all the same. And then, tucked in the back pocket of that folder, I found something else. A printout of a life insurance policy, recently updated. The beneficiary? Derek Ellison. That's when it hit me. They hadn't just planned for my care, they planned for my death. They were just waiting for the paperwork to clear. I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen I'd made thousands of meals in, and realized I wasn't a mother to them anymore. I was inventory, a number, a payout. That was the moment I stopped hoping they'd come around and started planning my exit. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the edge of my bed, well, the bed that used to be mine, watching the light from the hallway creep under the door like a slow, quiet betrayal. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was calculating. In the morning, I waited until Derek left for his so-called meeting. Kristen was still in bed. She didn't hear me open the pantry door or slide out the shoebox behind the rice bags. Inside were my old handwritten ledgers, account numbers, passwords, notes from years ago. Funny how mothers keep track of everything, even when no one thinks they're paying attention. The next name I typed into my phone was Langford, Daniel Langford. Once a shy little boy in my 3rd grade class, now a well-known estate lawyer with his own firm, I called him from the back porch, whispering like someone trying not to wake the dead. "Mrs. Ellison?" he said after I gave my name. "Yes, Daniel, I think I'm about to be erased." I told him everything, the forged signature, the house sale, the life insurance policy. I kept my voice steady, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. He didn't interrupt, not once. When I finished, he let out a long breath and said, "You're not the first, but you're damn sure going to be the last if I have anything to say about it." By 2 p.m., I was sitting in his office. We went through the power of attorney form together. Daniel pointed to a line near the bottom. "This version doesn't give them authority to sell real estate without your explicit consent, which they don't have." It felt like a door opened, a small one, but just wide enough for me to step through. Within 3 days, Daniel filed the paperwork to revoke the old document and restore full legal control back to me. The house was pulled off the market. I signed a new listing agreement, in my name this time. I didn't wait for a confrontation. I didn't tell Derek. I didn't leave a note. I simply took back what was already mine. That night, I stood in the living room staring at the bare spot on the carpet where our old couch used to sit. Christmas mornings, sick days, late night talks, and now, just echoes. I whispered to the silence, that was the last time. Because something broke in me the day I realized my son didn't care if I lived or died, and something stronger took its place. I didn't slam the door. I didn't send a message. I didn't even take a last look. I just left. The sale went through fast, cash buyer, no questions. Daniel made sure everything was clean, airtight. I kept only what mattered, Mark's watch, a handful of photos, and a box of letters I'd written but never sent. Everything else? Donated, sold, or forgotten. Before I drove off, I unplugged the fridge, closed the blinds, and pulled the key from the ceramic frog one last time. No forwarding address, no goodbyes. Just me, just silence, just freedom. I drove north with no GPS, just a paper map and a half tank of gas. I slept in my car the first night, parked behind a truck stop near Richmond. The second night, I pulled into a tiny town in Vermont, Pinerove. Never heard of it before, but something about it felt untouched, like no one there would care who I used to be. I introduced myself as Margaret Benson, retired librarian, no family, just looking for quiet. I rented a small trailer behind a bait shop, $580 a month, no lease, just cash. The owner, Jim, only asked, "You smoke?" I said no, and that was that. Every morning, I walked to the local library and volunteered to help shelve books. Nobody asked where I came from. They just liked that I remembered their names and always smiled when they walked in. That's where I met Elena, a young waitress with tired eyes and a daughter named Tilly, who clung to my arm like she'd always known me. After a few days, Tilly started calling me Nana Margaret. I never corrected her. I helped with reading, babysat during shifts, even taught Tilly how to write her name in cursive. We baked cookies from box mix and built paper towns on the floor. She never asked about my past. Elena never pried. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I kept a notebook under my pillow where I wrote down every lie I told, just in case I needed to remember who Margaret was supposed to be. But most days, I didn't open it, because for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't mourning what I'd lost. I was building something new, quietly, softly, and on my own terms. It started with a video, 30 seconds long, just Tilly opening a birthday present in the town center rec room. Streamers, plastic tablecloths, store-bought cupcakes. I was sitting beside her, smiling, reading the card out loud. I didn't even know I was on camera, but someone posted it. Someone shared it. And somehow, someone recognized me. 3 days later, Elena came rushing into the library, her phone in her hand. "Margaret," she said, breathless, "you need to see this." The clip had over 400,000 views. Caption, "Found her. Grandma Ghost is alive and well in Vermont." My name was trending, again, but not the name I'd chosen. The internet did what it does, dug up old headlines, cross-referenced photos, matched birth records, and just like that, Margaret Benson became Martha Ellison again. I shut off the Wi-Fi that night, packed a go bag, not because I was scared, but because I was tired of being found. The next morning, a silver SUV with Georgia plates slowed in front of the library. I didn't need to see the driver to know. Derek. He stepped out, wearing that same forced smile I used to fall for. He stood outside for a long time, holding a coffee like it was peace offering. I watched from behind the shelves, waited, then stepped outside. He said nothing for a while. Then finally, "Mom, please, just come home." I looked at him for what felt like years. The man I had raised, the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street, the same one who stood to gain $50,000 if I had died. I said, "I already did. You just weren't there for the funeral." He flinched. said nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned, walked back inside, and let the door shut quietly behind me. 3 days later, a letter arrived at the library's return slot. No return address, just 2 words on the envelope. I'm sorry. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat with Tilly on the beach, stacking shells in the shape of a heart. She giggled when it collapsed, and I laughed with her. The kind of laugh that doesn't carry weight anymore. The kind that means I'm finally free. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments, have you ever chosen peace over apology? I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your power, silently, beautifully, just like Martha.